40 below zero. Months of total darkness, a steel ship that survives by ramming a frozen ocean over and over all night long. The crew inside? They have to sleep through every hit. This is how people actually live aboard an icebreaker at the top of the world. And some of it sounds almost impossible. An icebreaker is one of the strangest machines humans have ever built. It doesn't slip through the water like a normal ship. It attacks the sea, driving up onto sheets of ice meters thick and crushing them under its own weight again and again for weeks on end. And living inside this thing for months at a time is a crew of a few dozen people. In some of the most hostile places on Earth, the frozen Arctic, the edge of Antarctica, where the nearest help can be days away and the sun doesn't rise for months. And you can't just drive to a ship like this. Crews are flown to a frozen port at the end of the map, or lifted out by helicopter onto a moving deck in the middle of the ice. The journey to work alone can take days. To survive once they're aboard, the ship becomes a warm, glowing town sealed against a world that's actively trying to freeze it solid. Stay with me, because what the darkness does to the crew is the part that surprises people most. Start with the sound. An icebreaker doesn't glide, it slams. All day and all night, the hull rides up onto the ice and the whole ship shudders as tons of frozen sea crack and grind down its sides. From inside, it's like trying to sleep inside a giant drum that something is pounding from the outside. New crew barely sleep the first few nights. The bunk shakes, the steel groans, and then somehow the body adapts, and the pounding becomes the lullaby. Veterans will tell you it's the silence that wakes them now. The moment the ship stops breaking ice, they snap awake, because if it's quiet, something is wrong. Then there's the cold. Outside, it can hit 40, even 50 below. At that temperature, bare skin freezes in minutes. A deep breath hurts. Bare metal will tear the skin off an ungloved hand, so the ship is sealed like a giant thermos. Inside, it's warm, bright, almost cozy, a little bubble of normal life with hot coffee and a TV, while a few centimeters of steel away, the world is a white nothing that can kill you in the open. Step through the wrong door without layering up, and the cold reminds you instantly who's really in charge out here. And nobody goes out alone. On the open ice, a slip, a snapped line, a sudden whiteout. Any of them can turn deadly in minutes, so crews move in pairs, radios on, watching each other for the first white patch of frostbite creeping across a face. Out here, even stepping outside is a team sport, but the hardest thing isn't the cold. It's the dark. Near the poles, the sun can vanish for weeks, even months. No sunrise, no sunset. Just an endless blue-black twilight, and then nothing at all. The crew lives by the clock alone, because the sky has stopped telling them anything. The body hates it. Sleep falls apart, moods sink. Days lose their edges and blur into one long night. So crews fight back with artificial light, vitamin D, and ironclad routine. Anything to convince the brain that time is still moving forward. Out here, a single string of warm cabin lights isn't decoration, it's medicine. So how does the ship actually win against ice meters thick? Brute force, plus a hidden trick. When the ice is too thick to crush head-on, the ship climbs up on top of it and lets its own enormous weight do the braking. And when it still gets stuck, hidden tanks deep in the hull pump water rapidly from one side to the other, rocking the entire ship back and forth to shake itself free. Picture trying to sleep while your whole building deliberately rolls left and right. For the crew, that's just an ordinary night, and here's something most people never realize. The most powerful icebreakers on Earth don't run on diesel at all. They carry their own nuclear reactor, a small power plant sealed deep inside the hull, generating enough energy to light a city, all of it spent on one job, smashing through ice. It means these ships can stay out for years without ever stopping to refuel. The crew, in other words, are living and sleeping a few decks above a working reactor at the top of the world in the dark. It's one of the most extreme places a human being can call home. And to them, it's just the ship. And like every ship, it runs on one thing even more than fuel: the food. One cook, a few dozen hungry, cold, sun-starved people, a voyage measured in months with no resupply for weeks at a time, everything for the entire trip loaded frozen before they left the last port. In the polar dark, a hot meal stops being just food. It becomes the event of the day, the one moment everyone gathers, warm and lit, and feels human together again. The cook learns every birthday, every favorite, because a surprise cake in the middle of the long night can lift the whole ship. A good cook up here is worth more than any officer on board. Morale isn't a luxury, it's survival, and it's served on a plate. And in the middle of all that ice, there's one comfort that sounds almost unbelievable. Many of these ships carry a sauna, a proper blistering hot sauna built deep inside the hull. After a shift out in the killing cold, a crew member can strip down and sit in heat that would feel obscene anywhere else, sometimes with nothing but a few centimeters of steel between the sweat on their skin and a frozen ocean waiting to claim them. It's more than a luxury. In a place this hostile, that violent swing from deadly cold to deep heat is how the body and the mind reset. A small steaming pocket of home in the loneliest sea on Earth. Then there are the visitors. In the Arctic, the most dangerous predator on Earth roams the very ice the ship is breaking, the polar bear. Curious, enormous, and always hungry. And they've been known to approach a stopped ship, drawn in by the smell of cooking. So the crew keeps watch. Stepping out onto the ice, shown to take readings or to free the ship, can mean posting a lookout for an animal that blends perfectly into the white. Out here, you are not at the top of the food chain. You're a warm light in the dark, and something is watching it, and sometimes the ice wins. The ship gets surrounded, beset, they call it, locked in by pressure from every side, unable to move forward or back. There is no roadside assistance at the top of the world, so they wait, hours, sometimes days, burning fuel, rationing patience, scanning the ice for the crack that finally lets them out. It's a strange kind of helplessness, a ship built to conquer ice, sitting perfectly still, held tight by the one thing it was made to beat, and that isolation has a darker edge. What happens when something goes wrong with a person, not the ship? Out on the open ocean, a vessel can sometimes divert to port or wait for a helicopter. Deep in the ice, in the polar dark, often neither is possible. A helicopter may be hundreds of miles out of range. The nearest hospital can be days of hard ice breaking away. So the ship's officers become the doctors, armed with a manual, a locked medicine chest, and a crackling radio link to physicians far to the south. And for anything truly serious, the entire ship may have to turn and batter its way back towards civilization for days, every hour counting, the ice fighting them the whole way. Out here, distance isn't just lonely. It can be the line between life and death. So why send people out here at all? Because the world needs these ships. They carve shipping lanes through frozen seas so cargo can keep moving. They escort other vessels that would be crushed without them. They resupply research bases at the very ends of the Earth. Scientists who'd be completely cut off if not for one red ship punching through the ice to reach them. The crew are the lifeline. When everything else stops at the edge of the ice, the icebreaker keeps going. But ask the crew what they actually remember, and it's rarely the cold or the work. It's the silence between the breaking. The aurora burning green and violet over an empty white world no photograph ever quite captures. The strange closeness of a few dozen people who became a family, because in months of darkness, 1,000 miles from anyone, they were all each other had. Most of them say the same thing when they get home, that they hated it, and that a part of them already wants to go back. Because nowhere else on Earth makes you feel so small, so alive, and so close to the handful of people freezing beside you. They cross the days off in the dark, waiting for that first thin line of sun to crawl back onto the horizon, the proof that the world and home is still out there waiting. So that's how a few dozen people live at the very top of the world, sleeping through the pounding, sealed against the cold, holding their minds together through the long dark, fed by one cook, watched by the bears, and a long way from any help, keeping the frozen edges of the planet connected to the rest of us. The next time you try to picture the loneliest job on Earth, picture that one warm, glowing ship ramming through the night so someone else doesn't have to. If you want to keep going, the next one is wild. How the crews of the smallest, loneliest boats at sea live in a steel box barely bigger than a bedroom, and why some of them never want to come back to land. That video's right here.